And welcome to the January program for the Madison DX Club. We're really pleased to have Mark WC3W as our speaker. He's going to be talking about the DX Marathon program. A little bit about Mark, and if I get this wrong, Mark, you can correct me.
No.
He's been a ham radio operator since 12 years old. So that makes you what, 24 years in the hobby then?
Just a few.
Lives down in Florida, and has other hobbies beyond. I mean, kind of an overachiever there, Mark. Single engine airplane license, motorcycles, BMW motorcycles, no less, sailing, and on top of everything, music to our ears, a musician. So Mark had the chance to take over the DX Marathon program 2.5 years ago, and it's been growing, but there's a lot more room for growth, and it's something which we thought would be of interest to our club and to those who watch our YouTube videos. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mark. So thanks for being with us tonight, Mark.
Thank you, Kevin. I really appreciate it. Can you hear me okay? And can you see my screen?
Yes.
Beautiful. Thank you. It's a privilege to be able to talk to the very famous Madison DX Club. You're maybe not so big in numbers, but you're mighty in the DX world, and particularly in so many very interesting guests that you have invited. I always love to go to the website and listen to a lot of the presentations because they're well selected and very well done. So it's a privilege for me to be here this evening. And as you mentioned, I am in South Florida, but I'm really a Midwesterner. I was born and raised in Peoria, Illinois, and I went to Bradley University, and I graduated with an electrical engineering degree there. And my mom lived there up until about 5 years ago, and my sister lives in St. Charles in the Chicago area. So I'm flyover country guy, and that's kind of my personality. And I find interacting with Midwesterners very comfortable with me. So anyway, I'm here to talk about the DX Marathon program, and I won't spend a whole lot of time on this first slide because Kevin did such a good job. I've been blessed with a lot of things, a lot of opportunities. I've been blessed with good health and in my life, and I just enjoy doing a lot of things. And but there's no, and I've done these off and on my entire life, but I can say without question that only one hobby has really stayed with me since I've been about 12 years old, and that's been this wonderful hobby that we all are in. It never waned, and now that I retired about 6 years ago, I've really thrown myself into it, and I'll give you a little history of how I got into this position in just a couple slides here. But when I was in grade school, I met this little gal, and she took me over to her house, and her dad worked for Caterpillar Tractor Company, actually a mechanical engineer. And he took me down in his basement. He says, "Come see something." And he started flipping switches on, and he had the Collins S line, and he started working DX. And I'll tell you, it didn't take me long to say, I got to do this. I was hooked. I was just hooked. And not only did it, I pursued my novice WN9JAC right after that experience, but it gave me vision very shortly thereafter that I truly wanted to focus on electrical engineering. And I never wavered from that all the way through college. And I spent my career in the power generation industry, steam turbines, gas turbines. I was an executive vice president for a multinational firm for about 20 years. And as I said, I just retired about 6 years ago, and I'm loving retirement. So that's a little bit about me. Um, the DX Marathon program, as Kevin alluded to, is actually, and we don't have the full numbers this year yet. I don't think they're going to be quite as high as these, but if you aggregate the last 3 years of participation growth in a hobby that's relatively flat, frankly. Fortunately, in the U.S., about 750,000 licensed hams, and we're holding our own. In the world, maybe 2.3 or 2.75 million, something like that. But it's a pretty flat flat hobby we're in, but we're growing. We're really growing, and those are the growth figures in those 2 years. I don't know what it is yet in 24. I don't think it'll be quite that high, but it's we're getting a lot of help. We're getting help from Cycle 25, certainly. We're getting a lot of help from the FT8 technology, whether you love it or hate it. My feeling on that is I've loved DX from the time I was 12 years old until today. I'm on the air every day. And I don't know how many of those ham radio operators are in DX, but I would represent that a good solid half or maybe even more are in the hobby because they just love working DX. And that's what this program is all about. And with Cycle 25 and FT8, my feeling is, like it or hate it, we play in a hobby that has always been blessed with innovation. I mean, I remember when we went from AM to sideband, and there were a lot of people that said that's not ham radio, you know. And I get that a few times today, but I guess my feeling is DX is so exciting that between Cycle 25 and FT8, it's giving a lot of hams that maybe don't have the kind of mega stations that a few of us have, that have an antenna up in the attic, and running barefoot. It gives them the opportunity to work DX. And what's wrong with that? I think that's exciting, and youth also. So I'm a history buff. I'm going to spend about 2 slides just giving you a little background about where did the DX Marathon program come from. Well, it actually was introduced before I was born in 1939 by CQ's predecessor. It was called Radio Magazine, and they came out with the program. It only ran a year, and then World War II started, and it went dormant for 8 years. And then in 1949, after the war, it came out again. It only survived about a year, but there was a lot of programs, CQ Worldwide and DXCC, everything came out at one time and just got kind of buried. And I don't think they had anybody to really pick it up and run with it. So in 2005, what used to be a neighbor of yours, Bob Loker, W9KNI, he lives in the Pacific Northwest now. He approached CQ Magazine and said, hey, this was kind of a neat program. Can we resurrect it? And they said, have at it, Bob. So Bob sat down and, went through the rules and whatever. And they said, go for it. Well, Bob is a very sharp guy. He's a great DXer too. And he's written a couple books. If you haven't, they're older books, but they're really good and they're still in print. He was no dummy, so he turned around. He said, I got to find somebody to run this program. And that's where John Sweeney, K9EL, picked it up. He was in Schaumburg, Illinois. And I call him my hero because he ran this program for 17 consecutive years, starting in 2005. And the reason I call him my hero is I had met John through a mutual friend of mine he just celebrated his 90th birthday, W4QN, who lives down in Jupiter, Florida, not too far from where I live now. And I met John at Visalia. I met him at Dayton a few times. I got to know John pretty well. And I heard he was retiring, and I had participated in marathon for 6 or 7 years, and I loved it. I just absolutely loved it. And I said, "What are you doing, John?" He says, "Mark, I'm burnt out. I'm burnt out. I've retired once. I'm building a house on the west coast of Florida. I just can't do it anymore." And I said, "Well, tell me about it, John." And he spoke about 5 minutes, and I said, "John, I just retired a couple of years ago, and I was in a pretty stressful job." And I said, "John, I'm trying to bring serenity into my life." I said, "This is full time, John." He says, "Yeah, I know it is, Mark." And I said, "I don't think I can do it." So I hung up and got to thinking about it. And in my business career, I had the opportunity to build a couple organizations and acquire a couple organizations. And I got to thinking, and I called him back. I said, "John, what do you think of the idea of defining some of the tasks and responsibilities that you have, and see if we can find some volunteers to step up and distribute those?" And he says, "I think it can be done." So he went down and he wrote some flow sheets, spreadsheets of the tasks, and we actually wrote job descriptions. And we went out and we started recruiting. And I'll get to that in a couple slides. But I said, "Okay, I'm game." And oh, by the way, he said he would stick around and serve on my board as emeritus. So I structured this whole organization. It had no structure before. It was sponsored by CQ Magazine, which, by the way, as most of you know, is no longer in existence. They went bankrupt, and although they haven't officially announced any closure, they haven't printed a magazine in over a year. And of course, Dick passed away last year, and his widow still is there, but I don't think it's going to survive. And they didn't really have much to do with our program other than printing the rules in November and printing the results in June. They provided no financial help to us, no overhead or administrative help. But anyway, I hated to see them go because I thought the magazine and their articles were quite good. But anyway, I formed some structure. I put a board of directors together with John's help of very experienced DXers and also very active participants in the project. I also then, because our program is about 2/3 international and about third North American, so I felt like I needed a sounding board. So I added an advisory board. They're not voting members or anything else. And then as a result of the job descriptions, we went out, and I've got the best group of 4 guys that I ever could have imagined. And there they are. And I got scoring managers. I got an IT manager who completely did our web page, and he just created our new submission tool. If any of you participate, our submission is so simple right now that he created all that. He's brilliant. He's the only working guy. Everybody else is retired, but he's born and raised in Venezuela, and he lives up in the Catskill Mountains now. But he's a phenomenal guy. I got a communications manager who's actually my partner in my remote station down here. And then Doug, I've known for a long time. He's a lawyer, and he's our rules and compliance. And some of you may know this guy here. Jim Reiser, he is 81C. He comes up with probably the best database, countrywide database in the world. He is the best, and he's on our board, our operating managers too. And he helps us with pirate spots. Every month he reports back to John lists of bad calls, pirate calls, all kinds of stuff. But he's a genius. He's an MIT graduate. He's a very smart man. Okay, I don't really know my audience very well. I usually interact a little bit with them, so I don't know how much y'all know about this program. And by the way, there's a reason I call it a program and not a contest. The reason I was in the program was I was a big contester for many years, and I wanted to back off of that a little bit in line with my vision of building some serenity into my retirement. So I got into DX. I have DXCCs and honor rolls, and I've got everything. I didn't need any more plaques, and I didn't need to be sitting on this chair over a long weekend. And So I did it because I used to work for a guy that told me, Mark, if you do something, anything you do is worth measuring. He used to tell me. Otherwise, you got to have a metric tied to whatever you do, and that's the reason why I got into marathon. Because and by the way, I would say half of our people in marathon do it for this reason. If you don't like competition, this is a great program to be in. If you like competition, we got a lot of competitors too. But I did it because I just wanted to learn. I wanted to know how I did year to year in my ability to chase DX, my improvement in operating skills, my improvement in stations, uh, how much time I was spending on the air chasing DX, all those things. How good I was at spotting, how good I was in recording proper zones, and I mean, there's a lot that goes into our hobby, and sometimes we get real sloppy about how we conduct our DXing. But this program, because we check for mistakes. It gives everybody an opportunity to really get better at chasing DX. And so year after year after year, every year I did better and better for 7 consecutive years until I took over my current position. And then, of course, I got to remove myself from that now, but I still work DX and I love it. So what is it? Okay, it's a marathon. You start working DX on January 1st, and you stop working DX for that calendar year on December 31st. And you work as many DXCC entities and zones as you can between those two dates. And I'll refine that in a second. One huge advantage is it's very simple, very simple. There's no multipliers. There's no confirmations required. For each DXCC entity you work, you get 1 point. For each CQ zone you work, you get 1 point. You add them together, and that's your score. The submission is a piece of cake. You keep your log, and anytime during the year you can submit, but your final submissions between January 1st, January 5th of the successive year, and you generate an ADIF file out of your log, and you click a button on the submission page, and up she goes, and you're done. You just submitted. You can work contests, anything you work in a contest, as long as it's from the same station. If you work new DXCC entities you can use those, no problem. You can have multiple operators as long as it's at the same station. You can do that too, okay? So it's an excellent reason to get on the air. It's not intense like a contest, but if you go on vacation for a couple weeks, no problem, unless there's some activation that you're really hot after and you're missing. But most of the time you can play catch up, no problem. I mentioned that already. It's a year-long global event. Okay. I keep using the word. It's easy, 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 easy. Okay. There's no sweat in doing this. And at the end of in the Q&A, I want to ask everybody, if somebody says they don't want to participate, I want to hear why. Because we're always looking for ways to make it better. You know, I once had a very learned guy tell me you get 95% of your good ideas in industry, your product ideas, from your customers. And I consider our participants our customers. Okay, the DXCC entities, there's 340 of those. And then to that, we add 6 additional worked all Europe entities. I won't go through them, but there they are. And so we have a total of 346 DXCC entities plus the 40 CQ zones. So theoretically, the absolute highest score, which of course is impossible, is 386. Now, why is it impossible? Because in those DXCC entities, as all of you know, there's activations, and everything ain't activated every year. So any kind of score above 300 or 300 is an amazing score. Most of our winners of our recognition plaques or certificates, they usually are above 300. Okay, and that's about it. So why participate? I had mentioned this already. I think I covered most of these. I want to mention one thing here, particularly for you, Kevin, and David, and a couple of you, the leadership of your club. What I'm finding is club leadership. One of the things that I've noticed between really active and growing clubs and those that are struggling is engagement, finding ways to get your membership engaged. And the DX Marathon program is great. You can have you can set up little teams. You can set up meetings where every month when you have meetings, you can put up a score sheet. How are we doing? Who's contributing? Whatever. It engages your membership. And I tell you, there's a lot of clubs that are dying because they just don't have enough stuff to get people involved in. This is an excellent way. You can have little competitions at your annual meeting, your Christmas parties. You can make awards. It's just a lot of fun. Okay. Uh, the frequencies, I heard a lot of you talk about 6 meters. 6 meters is considered a DX band in DX Marathon. We have people, I'm going to talk 2 slides ahead. If you can enter this program in a single band. We have people that enter the DX Marathon every year in 6 meters, and they try to work as many DX entities. Now they're not going to work 300, okay, but you can do that if you like it, okay. 6 meters to 160, and the beauty of our program versus a contest is those beautiful work bands, which I love. I love work bands. Everything, every band, 6 to 160. No contacts for repeaters or satellites, no contacts with maritime mobile or aeronautical mobile. And what we're trying to do in our program, and you'll see that in another slide, is to the best of our ability, knowing we can't be perfect, what we try to do is create level playing fields for our participants. And I'll explain that in a second. And all contacts must be made entirely over amateur radio frequencies, no echo link, no DMR contacts allowed. Very simple. Okay, now these 2 slides are kind of the heart and soul of my 25,000 foot presentation and description of this program. And the reason it is as all of you are sitting there and looking at these, if you can't slot yourself in one of these, again, I want you to tell me during Q&A, because I think I got you covered here. If you've got a license and you've got a radio and you got an antenna, I think you're going to fit in one of these tranches, okay? Unlimited, that's me. I've always been blessed. I've had big stations, big towers. I got a remote station up in Yeehaw Junction, 100-foot tower, JK Navassa, stacked over a 30-40. I got a 80 meter quarter wave dipole with 120 radials. I got a 160 out there. I run a linear. I got a SARS. I got a listening antenna. Everything unlimited means you can do anything you want within your license, which allow your license permits. Okay, that's the unlimited class. These are the big guys. Okay, now we jump down to limited. Limited, no linears, 100 watts, and you can use array or Yagi antennas with some restrictions. I won't go through these at this time, but just think one step down. You can use a Yagi, you can use a directional antenna, but 100 watts. Then we go down to formula. Formula is what I believe most hams in the world are in this class. Why? Money, real estate, HOAs, whatever. You got 100 watts and you got a simple wire out, or you got a vertical. And if you do it, I've looked at it. I haven't done an exhaustive study, but probably no way to do it. But if you do a bell-shaped curve, I think the 2 sigma inside, if you put all the hams inside, I bet most hams are in this category here. Okay, that grew last year. We grew 50%. That category grew 400% in our program last year. I love hams. But also, I have a vision to continue to do our program in 2 or 3 years, and that's where I'm going to get my peeps. My peeps are in formula class, I think. Okay, and then we got the QRPers. God bless them. I don't know how they do it, but it is growing, and we have avid QRPers in our program too. I'll mention this for 2025. I made 2 changes in these. I created subclasses only because I heard my customers say, Mark, I would like to do this. And what I did on the formula, we have people that have simple wires and verticals, but they want to run power. So I created a subset within formula. You can run a full legal limit and have a wire antenna or vertical. I did the same thing QRP. I had limitations on antennas. QRP is 5 watt, 5 watt. But what I did is I said, okay, you have to have the same antennas as the limited, but for you QRPers that want to put up a stack or whatever, you can do that too. And I created a category for them. I got the president of the QRPIU. I can't remember the name of the organization. He stepped up. He wants to sponsor a plaque, and I'm listening to my customer. So I created that. Okay, snapshot of, we call these classes. Now the next slide. Again, I want you all to slot yourself here. Okay. As you might imagine, I kind of go for the gusto all the time. It's kind of in my DNA. I like all bands and I like all modes, and I'm unlimited. So if you're that kind of guy, you can do it. If you're the kind of guy like my friend Norm, W4QM, can't stand FT8. He's got a beautiful station. He's unlimited, but he, in 2000, I think it was 19, he entered the marathon program in CW mode only, which you can do. You can pick your mode. He won #1 in the world. I think he had 309 points. If you just, and by the way, you can change these from year to year. He entered in CW. I've got a guy down here in Florida. He enters sideband only. There's guys that just do digital, FT8, RTTY, you can do that. You can actually pick a band. We have people throughout the world that pick 6 meters. That's all they do. They turn in a score in 6 meters. We have people, there's a Norwegian that loves 160 meters. I noticed you had a fella in one of your, Kevin, in one of your Zoom meetings or your YouTube meetings that talked about 160 meters, which by the way was a phenomenal presentation. Some people enter the marathon in 160 meters only. You can do that. Okay. So, tailor it to what you like. Change it. We got guys, they compete one year in 40 meters. And they said, I think I'm going to try 15 meters this year. And by the way, you don't have to declare until the end of the year. Okay. So if you decide, if you work everything, but you kind of focus in one band, okay, that's okay. And then you can look at scores last year. We got history files on the web. You can see where the hunt is. If you think you're competitive, you can kind of get an idea. If you say, I'm not going to do anything, if you're the competitive type of person, just enter it in all bands and all modes. No problem. You can do that too. You don't have to declare. I didn't mention it yet. There's no cost to participate in this program. No cost. There's no sign up, with one little exception, which I'll explain. Okay. I just want to mention, it's a very busy slide. I want to mention 2 things. One, we have a redesigned web page. I'm going to show you in the next slide, www.dxmarathon.com. It has got a ton of very good information. We've worked hard to redesign it, but more importantly, we've worked extremely hard to keep it current. K2CIB literally is uploading almost daily bad calls, pirates, broken calls, de-expeditions, start and stop dates of de-expeditions. It's a wealth of information on the web. We have listing every station in Antarctica, every call. Okay, it's just check it out. Even if you don't want to play in the game, check it out, because it's really a very helpful website. The other thing I want to say is single TX and RX. Okay, you can use multiple calls. If you have a contest call, you can use a contest call as long as you are at one station. I had a home in Colorado for about 8 years. I sold it last fall. I had an HF station there. I have an HF station in Florida. I can't commingle my score. I can't work stations out there and work my Florida remotely and add them and submit a score. That's a not. Cannot do that. Cannot do that. I could enter out there under a stroke P or something, or a different call. I could enter in Florida and put 2 submissions in. That's okay. But I can't commingle. Again, we're trying to keep this level. Mobile stations, this ain't the program for you. You know, a guy that gets in an RV and drives all over the country, goes to Colorado and sits on Pikes Peak for, you know, a week and starts work. No, it's not a level playing field. POTA is an expanding organization, but I was told the other day, POTA doesn't, usually you're running 10 watts and you're generally not working DX. So I don't know if we'll ever do anything there. But anyway, all right, let me move. Here's a copy of the web page I just show you. It's a beautiful job. I have my own column here, and I'm writing something in there, you know, 2 or 3 times a month, 3 or 4 pertinent stuff. We have all the rules in here. I translated the rules into 14 different languages because we are a international company. And okay. And this is a submission tool. I'm not going to go through this now, but remember what I said. This submission tool, I've had so many of our participants say, we just love this tool because it wasn't this easy all the time. Go to your logging program. By the way, we have people that still do paper logs. We'll take care of you. No problem. Don't think that you have to have a logging program to participate. But if you have a logging program, like most people do, generate your ADIF file, load ADIF. You save that in your downloads. You hit that button. You point to downloads. You point your file. You click it. Up she goes. And you have just put a submission in. You can do it all year long. Every successive submission supersedes what's in there already. It's only private to you. We don't publicize scores. We've had a lot of discussion on that, but we'll have to see. You can probably go to Club Log, and if you're really in the competitive hunt, get an idea of what other people are doing. These are some of the reports that you get on. You get a beautiful submission. I use DX Labs. I get a nice, Dave does a real nice submission he's a participant also, by the way. So is Mike Walker for Ham Radio Deluxe down in Texas. He won. We give a certificate for the high score in 5 land. He won it last year. He's a big participant. So these logging people are building their programs to support marathon, and we love it. This shows you every zone you work. It shows you whether you do have a confirmation. We don't require confirmations, but you know, we do some checking, which I'm going to talk next. And if you have one that's unconfirmed and you happen to have one that's confirmed, you want to submit the confirmed one, and you can do this right off the submission tool. Okay, why? Because if it's not confirmed and we happen to fall on a verification and we see from the other guy that you're not in the log, you don't want that. You don't get thrown out of the program, by the way. We're very generous. You get a 1-point deduct if you have a wrong zone or a broken call, or if we find, you know, a non-matching queue. Again, we don't do 100. Let me talk about verification. This program is an honor system, and in order to protect those who play by the rules, we do feel, otherwise we'd start losing these people. We feel that if anybody's cheating, we're gonna try to find them, and you know, and they're gonna pay their penalties and dues. So we do some verification checking. It's not done 100%. When we go for the big guns and some of the more competitive people where you might have a 10-point spread between the top 10 guys, we'll vet those out pretty closely. And 1 point, you don't think 1 point's important when you got 300? Sometimes the top 10 guys are separated by 5 points. So to those folks, it's very important. I will personally, or John will call a DXpedition, Beauvais, Crozet, and we'll ask them, can you send us your ADIF files? Most of them do. We load that into our computer. So when our participants say they worked the guy, we'll do a computer check and, you know, try to find them in both logs. So that's the only thing we're doing. Hey, you know, we're doing this for fun. But again, to protect those that are playing by the rule, I know what would happen if we all of a sudden had a plethora of cheating. It just wouldn't be good. Okay. We believe heavily in recognition, and we have many recognition categories, and they're all explained on the website. I'm not going to go through that. right now, but we have plaques, we have plaque sponsors, and we would love the Madison DX Club to have their name like the Northern Illinois DX Association in their sponsorship. It costs you $100 per year, and you get your name on the plaque. We find you a match for sponsorship, and you're in my article that I write. You're on the website. You get some nice publicity. And by the way, that's the only cost. All of us are volunteers. And what I'm trying to do, frankly, we do have expenses, and I don't want my volunteers having to dip into their own pockets. So I have a PayPal extension on my website. And for those that are so moved, if they want to throw $10 or $5 at us, we'll gladly and graciously accept that. And I'm building our working capital, and I'm really interested in growth also. And as I mentioned to Kevin before the meeting, my biggest challenge right now in growth is just getting the word out. I just closed on the house that I'm sitting in here in Port St. Lucie, Florida. And I joined a Port St. Lucie DX club, and I gave a presentation a month ago. There was 35 guys in the club, and my first question is, many times I do in these meetings, how many of you have heard of the DX Marathon program? 2 hands went up. That's my problem right now. I've got to figure out ways to get the word out. You know, Bernie, by publishing articles in QST, and I've been interviewed by Tim Duffy. I'm going to go on with Josh on the end of this month, Josh and Amanda on the radio, Ham Radio 2. Kevin, W1DED, I've done podcasts on. I just got to figure a way to get the word out. I mean, I love doing club meetings, but I gotta try to populate the population. I'm going to skip through this, but the only thing I want to mention here, we have not only clubs that sponsor, but one of my dear friends, W2CQ, Bill, down in Fort Lauderdale, I've got a big push in this program for youth and a little bit for women, but especially for youth, because I think they're going to save our hobby. I went to Dayton last spring, and I spent 90% of my time with the youth organizations. I sponsored a young lady who won our youth competition from Brazil, and I got her speaking to teachers of youth and also to her youth peers. I'm big on that. He wanted to sponsor the plaque. I said, Bill, no problem. He wrote me out a check for $100. He's now the sponsor. I divided the youth tranche, by the way, this year into 2 age groups, 25 to 15, 15 and younger, because I want to get youth into this program. And youth they're just great in this program. Okay, so that's enough on sponsorships. I'm not going to, I know a lot of your experts here. I tell you what, this is helping our program, and I love Cycle 25. We had 350,000 queues last year in 2023. 50% of the queues, of those queues, were on 10, 12, and 15 meters. That's Cycle 25 at its best, okay? It's helped the program. A lot of numbers here. I'm not going to go through it. The reds are the 22 results. The whites are the 23, but you can see we had 327,000 queues among 1,700 participants. And I want to grow this number. You know, POTA's up to 10,000. We're peanuts right now compared to the number of hams out there that are doing DX. We got so much room to grow, it's ridiculous. As I mentioned, scores above 300, maximum score last year, Cycle 25, 329. In 2022, it's 307. So you can see how the cycle helps us. Error rates, okay. We have club scores. I've completely redesigned the club score for 24 because I don't think it's fair for a club that has 150 people to be competing against a club that has 25. So I developed 3 tranches of clubs, 75 and above, 75 to 25, and 25 and less, okay? I've also, just in 2025, I'm dividing international clubs from North American clubs. Why am I doing that? This club right here, Indonesia, 50,000 points. Indonesia is one DXCC area. It's 3,000 miles long. It's 2,000 miles. It's got 3,000 islands. They just flooded the program last year, and it's just again, I try to create parity. So, you know, the U.S. clubs, North American clubs, they have to be within a 250-mile radius. Like it's like the ARRL definition of club rules. So anyway, enough on that. U.S. and North America, highest percent. South America is very active in our program, and we got Oceania, and everything falls below them. Single mode entries, I mentioned, it's growing. This is on the 350,000 queues. Love it or hate it, FT8s were 76% of all the 357,000 queues. I mean, that's life. I'm a CW Ops member. CW Ops sponsors 4 plaques, and I'm trying to do some things to pump up the CW participation because I love CW and I'd love to see that number grow. Here's cycle 25. Remember I said a score of 300 and above, okay, is really a good score. In 2022, we had about 18 people that scored in the whole program that scored above 300. Look what happened last year. We had almost 100 people. That's cycle 25. Gents, if you're not in DX, or if you're DX and went latent, don't miss this opportunity. This cycle 20, I don't know how long it's going to play out, but it is fun. It is fun. Okay, I'm going to conclude now. I mentioned the youth overlay. I do have a YL overlay. Again, I call them overlay because I'm not saying these people have to choose to be YLs or they choose to be, they can participate in the open. It's kind of like a special booster for them because I'm trying to encourage participation of those groups in our program. I mentioned this restructuring, super marathon. That's a brand new plaque in honor of John Sweeney's contribution. The member that has the highest consecutive 5-year total, and this 24 will be the first year I'll award it. I announced this at W9DXCC and W4DXCC last year. They're going to get a special plaque. The challenge, I'm not going to spend a lot of time, brand new in 2024. Everybody knows what the DXCC challenge is. This is just like it on 8 bands from 10 meters to 80 meters. Work as many of those DXCC entities and CQ zones as you can. I limited the number to 75. We had 75 signups only because it does put a burden on our scoring effort, and we'll see how it goes this year. And I mentioned a lot of podcasts. This is just one I did. I can't even remember which one this was, but feel free to go and look at that. I mentioned to Kevin earlier, we're doing a K9NL is doing a Zoom meeting tomorrow night. I'm going to send him some information. If you've got some time, it'd be actually 4:30 your time, 5:30. I did it to try to include some Europeans. Amazing presentation on DX spotting aids, phenomenal. So Kevin, with that, I'll stop sharing and I'm open for any questions.
Well, Mark, that was great, enthusiastic. And I love your saying, because I believed this for a long time myself, what gets measured gets done.
Amen.
And I jotted down a few questions as you're going along, but you answered all of them. So that was very, very a good sign of a good program. So other questions for Mark?
I got one. I've been just tracking what I do every year for quite a few years. And I remember several years ago, maybe it was more than that, someone suggested I sign up or I submit it, but at the time it was pretty onerous to do the logging, and you only had 5 days to do it in the end of the year. And if you kept it up all year, it may have not been so bad. But so basically I could go on January 1st and do an ADF export of every QSO. Like I had 15,000 last year. I could upload all 15,000 and it would automatically calculate my zones and countries for me. I wouldn't have to do anything else.
No.
Okay.
Okay. Let me clarify. Thank you for the question, Gary, because it's a really good one. With the new submission tool, we recognize that at the end of the year, we're also busy, and then January 1 through January 5. The reason we picked those dates is CQ Magazine, to publish their article in June, they needed the final reports and my article by April 1st. I didn't know why it took them so long. We don't have them now. We can do it anytime we want. By the way, last year when we were doing ourselves, the last 2 years, we beat that timing 2.5 months. We were absolutely finished by by April. Okay, to your first question, with the new submission tool, you can submit every month of the year. So at the end, all you're doing is doing some very, very final tweaking. Okay, that answers your first question. So you don't have to do everything between January 1st. You can do your ADIF files anytime, right up until the end, do them again. Okay, your second question, every participant is responsible for the information that they put in their log, including the proper identification of CQ zones. You probably don't realize this. I use DX Labs. DX Labs used QRZ as their database to identify CQ zones. Do you know that QRZ has a 1% error in CQ zones? Why is that? Because the operators put their CQ zones in, and some operators have a clue of what CQ zones are in. Furthermore, many flip-flop the ITU zones and the CQ zones. They put them in the wrong field. So if you've got a program that goes in and grabs that information from QRZ and grabs the CQ zone and has the ITU, you're going to get dinged. Okay, so my point is, and this makes us all better DXers, our participants have the responsibility to check their logs, to verify the proper zones, to verify they didn't put a 0 in for an O. We do none of that checking. We're just scoring you. If you make a mistake, we'll flag it, but we don't check for you that it's the right thing, okay? That's a very important distinction. And I kind of like it because, again, I see one of the merits of our program is to make us all better DXers. You know, if you're working the DX, you should know what zone they're in. You should not be making typos and entering their scores. You should verify their scores. And if you look at the helps part on our website and go through what John, K2CIB, does about calls, good calls and bad calls, there's a lot of crap out there in the DX environment. You know, false calls and pirates. There is a myriad of errors and just nasty stuff. So we as DX operators, what makes us good DX operators is to verify what we've done. I hope that answered your question.
Oh, that's fine. Thanks.
Yeah.
Other questions for Mark? Okay, great. Thanks an awful lot, Mark. And please send me that information for tomorrow night's program. I'll get that out. And if you have a reference to that article back in, I think you said
November.
November
Of 2024 is when it appeared. All I can send you on that is, I mean, if somebody has the magazine, it's in there, or if they got the e-link to Q.
Yeah.
It's in November issue. It's in the DX section of the November issue.
Perfect.
That's all. That's about all I can tell you. You know what? I could send you a copy of the article. They sent me a real nice copy, so I'll send you that copy.
Perfect. Perfect.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments? Mark, thanks an awful lot for spending the time with us this evening. We'll get this up on our YouTube channel, and I'll let you know the link for that. So I bid everyone a good evening and good DX. Take care.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody.
Yep. Good night.
Thank you, Mark.